Hello and welcome back to the Vintage Podcast. Today we have introduced for the first time our visual element. Depending on where you're listening, you will be able to watch along with us as well today, because there is a visual element to today's episode, but you won't necessarily require it. We do hope to change and develop the visual element as time goes on, so don't worry, because this is going to change quite a lot. It's hopefully enough to do for now. It's just kind of a test, so if it is a little bit low quality, don't worry too much. It will grow, develop, whatever you want to say over time. But realistically today, and I don't want to mess about too much with an introduction, is all it's going to be is me going through with Patrick, like you met last time, what I have titled preliminarily Wine 101. And what that's going to be is I've asked him to kind of prepare some answers on what would be his session 1 in a wine appreciation course if he was to run one. We've got dummy glasses here with some water. We're going to put some water in them and show you. There'll be a visual element, like I said, that, basically what you should look out for and how you can approach wine tasting if it's something you're interested in. So if that is something you're interested in, we're going to do it with spirits as well at some stage. So do follow us if you're going to keep up with this kind of thing, and we'll join in a lot of more sessions like this as time goes on. But without messing about anymore, I'm just going to pass straight over to Patrick, who's going to take you through Wine 101. So, hello, welcome back.
Hi.
How are you feeling?
I am not feeling great today because I was in London at the weekend, but I'm pretty good.
But it was a good trip.
Fantastic trip.
That's all right. Great. I'm not going to mess around too much today. All we're going to do is get straight into what I have titled Wine 101.
Okay.
We talked before a little bit about the idea of you running courses in wine appreciation, and basically what it is this is going to be a blueprint of sorts for what your session 1 might be. Yeah. So we can kind of give people the absolute basics of what it is to not consume but appreciate and enjoy wine in a slightly more advanced way than they might be used to.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically the first way to open with that is, what is wine appreciation and how would you talk about that?
Well, I would say wine appreciation will be the basics. Obviously, a lot of people would first think the differentiations between red and white, and then rosé as well. Obviously, the different types of grape and so on. But you tend to find I tend to find that wine appreciation is a little bit like coffee. You acquire a taste for it, and until you do a tasting or a wine appreciation course, you don't actually really get to appreciate it in the way that I suppose you would like to. A lot of people drink wine for the sake of drinking wine.
Yes.
And that's why I think, especially as you progress in life from 20, 21 up to 25, your taste changes, and you find a lot of people, I would say 25-year-olds to 35-year-olds will always be interested in our tasting events that we host.
Okay.
And the reason they're doing that is because of the fact that there maybe isn't wine appreciation courses for them to go to, or they maybe think there's some sort of snobbery behind it, whereas really it's very much like, do you like this? Do you not? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it?
And then I suppose learning how to find more in that as well.
Yeah.
Because it can be, there's a very face value element, and then I have found anyway that after you start to recognize that, you can start to draw more over time as you learn a little bit about where things come from.
Yeah, one thing I find about wine especially is until you're sitting down with 4 glasses or 8 glasses side by side, you don't get to be able to pick out the different things about what flavors you're getting on the nose and on the taste as well. But the minute you set down a Pinot Grigio beside a Chardonnay and beside a Sauvignon Blanc, you can really see the drastic difference. And that's the thing I like about wine appreciation courses, because it's a way of training yourself as to what you like and what you don't like. And we do tastings here a couple of times a month, most months of the year, and it's very, very, very seldom that everyone in the room will like the wine.
I think that's a really important part of it as well, because initially, when, like, from my point of view as someone who's coming into this at a very early stage, you almost feel disappointed at first when you do dislike something, because it almost feels like you've failed or that you've not quite managed it.
Yeah.
But you then start to come around to the idea that you have to dislike some things, because it's sort of the nature of having a palate to develop and learn about.
Yeah. The other thing too is, you tend to find that people who try wine for the first time, and we've all been there, where your uni days or whatever it may be, and you walk into a supermarket, you walk into a wine shop, and you look and you see a bottle at a £5 and you see a bottle at a £10, and you think to yourself, let's try the £5 bottle because I don't know if I'm going to like this.
Yeah.
Why waste money? Then you bring it home, you taste it, and you say, maybe that's too acidic, maybe that's too this, too that, or will give me a really bad head the next day. And if I had a penny for every time I was told wine gives me an awful hangover, I would always, I'd be a very rich man, but I would always say it depends what type of wine you're drinking, because if I open 2 bottles right now, I mean, you were to taste a £5 bottle, and we were to taste a 10 or maybe £12 bottle side by side, I'd be pretty sure that both of us
be easy blind to know. Yeah,
definitely. And that's the thing. I think that's the crucial part as well about the wine appreciation courses, is you get to taste these things without cracking open the wallet and spending too much. But the thing that is so funny for whenever you're out and you're in bars and clubs and so on, nobody would think twice about buying a round of shots for £29 for you and your friends.
Yeah.
But spend that extra £3 on a bottle of wine. That's
it can't be done.
That's breaking the bank. So I find that's very funny, and do you know what? We're all guilty. Been there myself.
Yeah, it really depends what mood you're in a lot of the time as to like how you will spend. But we all kind of know that. But you've mentioned already the idea of opening a bottle, which is obviously the first part of the whole process. But beyond that, after you've opened the bottle, I've heard different things about like mnemonics and things you can remember as to what you do following that. Immediately all the way through to when the bottle's empty. But I've noted them down just as to try and jog my memory, but they might be wrong. There are 5 S's to remember, some people say.
There is,
which I think are sight, swirl, smell, sip, and savor. Is that correct, or have I missed?
That would sound about right.
Okay.
And it's so true. I know for a lot of people they don't really care what the wine looks like as such, but there is a drastic difference. If you crack open so it's 2025 now, but if you crack open a 2024 bottle of what maybe Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, it's some of them are almost crystal clear.
Okay.
Whereas if you have a couple of years aging, or a different type of grape, maybe one that has been barrel aged or anything, you will get that sort of golden straw color and maybe even darker as well. So it does, especially whenever you're tasting wine blind. That is a big thing. But for somebody who's just learning to appreciate, I would say sight doesn't make a massive difference.
Okay.
Then the smell would be the next thing. I would say that wine is very mood dependent. I know for myself, there's certain, we have about maybe 1,300 different wines downstairs in the shop here, and if I was bringing a bottle of wine home, say on a Friday or Saturday evening, it could take me a long time.
Yeah. Especially with
just
is that like
bottle.
Choice paralysis type thing in a lot of cases, but then your mood will make that probably even harder. Yeah.
But your mood definitely would say, am I feeling more of a heavy wine or lighter wine or whatever. So it is very mood dependent. But with the smell, you tend to find that even though people, I would say my smell, especially after COVID, is not as good as what it was. I had lost my taste and smell at one point, and I definitely say it's not as good as it was.
Okay.
So a lot of people would smell the wine and it transports them back to that one moment in history.
Yeah. Like a very nostalgic thing.
Yeah. So if you're getting the greens, or you're getting a real nice pear or something, that will transfer you back to that.
Well, it is a very nostalgic thing. The use of senses. I find visually for me, it's only really like the weather that takes me back to things, but smell and taste are huge.
Massive.
Especially when it comes to going all the way back, like way back. Like when you say about pears always get me. I went on a school trip to Italy when I was 15, and pears always take me right back to when we went to Capri.
Yeah.
And we tried pears there because they've never been beaten for me since then. And it's just, I do find that like it's quite fascinating how much you can just root yourself through these like really simple senses.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, you know, I remember you mentioned pears. I remember my granny, back whenever I was about maybe 7 or 8, she used to get like a pear and a sponge.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the first thing I think of every time I smell or taste pear from a wine. So that's it does, it brings you back, which is good. But so yeah, that's the first two main ones as such. But the other thing I would say is obviously moving on to taste. You've got the taste of the wine as well. So the swirl, swirl. We would look at that to see is there any legs on the wine. So whenever you run the glass around, you can see.
We have actually. I brought a visual aid. What we'll do is I'm just slowly adjusting, so bring that a bit closer.
Yeah.
And then what I can do is we can sort of show, and I'll do my beginner's method, and you do a more educated one, and we'll see. You know, so it's kind of like that. I've always tried to do it. I have friends who can do it without basically barely moving the glass.
Yeah.
They just have a hand on the table and it just starts to spin, which I've always been fascinated by. But
I would be more
something wrong. Yeah. Okay.
I feel more like I would have to. No, in saying that it doesn't take a lot of movement.
No.
Really, just get the swirl going, and that would be it. And then all of a sudden, once you see the legs, the legs are running down the glass on the inside.
You can't even see that. So, you can sort of see that happening with water, but it's not viscous enough. This camera won't pick that up, but you can see as it runs down the side. Then isn't it the length of time it takes notes how much alcohol or the percentage of alcohol roughly?
Yes,
that's in the wine,
and age as well.
Oh, right, okay.
Can reflect age as well. So it just depends what wine you have, really. But yeah, it's I probably shouldn't know all the facts, but I don't really know exactly what all is shown. But if you had asked me on a better day, maybe I would. So that would be the next thing. But most people, again, especially whenever you're at wine appreciation level, that's not a massive thing for people.
It's just whatever it takes to get people to see that little bit more that they maybe didn't know previously.
Yeah.
So as long as if someone's taking away the fact that I reckon most people don't know that you can gather anything from that. So if they're taking something away, I think that's key.
100%. So yes, then moving on to.
We try and count through what we've done.
Yeah.
So sight, smell. We've swirled it. Would you be on to sip? I suppose is that's when your flavor comes in.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, you get exactly what you smell. But, there is a few times that you get to have your first sip and you think to yourself, that's interesting. That's a flavour that I didn't get on the nose. Yeah. So once you get it on the palate, it's quite interesting. I actually quite like that about wine. Whenever it delivers two different things, nearly on the nose and on the palate as well. But I tend to find with me that because I had mentioned earlier, my nose wouldn't be the best as such for smelling anymore. But the minute I get my first sip, and then I smell it again, it almost
kind of wakes up.
It wakes it up, it magnifies it.
Yeah.
Which is one thing, but there's no right or wrong answer with regards to what you're getting, because you get in a tasting room, you get so many different answers.
Yeah, I've also heard quite a lot of the time you should ignore a lot what's written on bottles. Is that what would you think about that? Because someone else
who writes it.
someone else told me it was at the event we were at a few weeks ago. I think it was the manager said, when you're going through any sort of appreciation course, don't base your assumptions about taste and smell off what it says on a bottle, because more often than not, it can be not wrong, but it'll guide you too much and then you'll get confused.
I would agree with that. I would never actually. I've never looked at the back of the bottle really until I have tasted it. I try to do all my tastings, especially whenever I'm judging wines for bringing them into the shop. I try to do them blind almost. I kind of try and guess, what country, what region, what price, and so on. And you know, obviously, if you're doing that and you've got the price in your head of £12 per bottle, and the sales rep who is presenting it to you is saying this is retailing at £9, you're going to say, wow, this is great value for money. And we did this recently, if you remember, with the Chilean Sauvignon Blanc, which is something that I'm not a massive fan of personally. But again, just personal taste. We sell loads of it. But we tasted it, and everyone, I think everyone was
very surprised.
Surprised. And definitely thought it was worth more than the $7.99 price tag that we had for it. So yeah, it's again very, very personal. But I would say that when it comes to sipping the wine, there's one thing that I was told many years ago, and that is that until you sip it for the third time, you do not get the true flavour.
And that kind of takes us into that last point, the savour one, where it's not just in... the bottle you were talking about just now was out for a few days in the shop for people to try.
Yeah.
And I remember a gentleman came in and just necked the entire glass. And fair enough, as soon as he had taken the whole glass at once, to be fair, it was only a sample size, but he just put it straight on the counter. That was enough for him, was that one go. But so another thing I've been picking up is that 1, 2, 3 format of approaching what you get from it. In terms of taking very, very small amounts and using that to...
Yeah, 100%. So the way I always look at it is the first sip that you take is almost like a mouthwash.
Yeah.
You know, if you know, it's like 5 o'clock in the evening now, but you know, if you had a Mexican for lunch, you've got those flavors, you've got the salsa still in there, you've got whatever, over. You know, and they're lingering in there, but you don't realize it. And the moment that you take your first sip, that is your mouthwash.
Otherwise you're gonna
cleansing.
You're gonna get that orange juice and toothpaste sort of explosion thing.
100%. The second sip, I would always say, is it coats your mouth. So taking the second sip, it's now getting into all the crevices and stuff, and it's now got rid of that earlier meal that you had, or you know, bag of cheese and onion crisps or whatever it may be that you had previously that day. And then the third time you take a sip, you're now getting the true flavors, because you've all your taste buds are now awake, you know. And you tend to find that, especially with the acidity and stuff in wine, it takes the first couple of sips to waken up those,
to get it going,
and get
and
get the juices flowing, saliva in the mouth. So it's a combination of it all, you know. So that's that would be it. So I would always say, whenever I'm tasting it, I never judge until I've tasted it for the third time. Okay. Obviously, you've got an idea in the first and second,
and how those first two interact is going to inform. Like, if the first two are awful and the third one's okay, you're probably still not going to pick it, because if you have to warm it up,
might not be a third step at that stage.
That's what I'm saying. So if there's a warm up process that's pleasant right the way throughout, yes, but it can still help you develop a bit of a not a preference, but an idea of whether or not you're going to choose this.
Yeah, there's even one other thing, and I remember, again, it says takes you back. I remember back in maybe October 2020, just after the first lockdown, we had a trip booked to Italy. Very last minute, obviously it was cancelled with COVID and so on, and then very last minute they contacted us and said, look, borders are open, we have nobody booked in because nothing was really planned. We know you were supposed to be here over the Easter break. Would you like to come out and visit? So me and a few guys from the distribution company and a few other wine shop owners, we all got together, and I think it was maybe like 7 or 8 of us, and headed out, hired a minivan, and just planned a trip for like 4 or 5 days through Italy. And the very first day we arrived, we tasted a Vermentino.
Okay.
Vermentino was something I had before, but not something that I would really know a hell of a lot about. And the very first sip was extremely salty.
Oh, okay.
Which is a characteristic that some wines can have. And if you had taken the first sip, you would have. It was a shock to the system.
Yeah.
So you would have probably said that's not for me. And I think that was almost probably 50% of my thoughts, and the other 50% was, well, this is different.
Yeah,
You know.
it's a bit of a surprise. Yeah, okay.
But whenever I got to that third sip, I then realized, oh wow, I actually really like this.
Yeah,
You know, so there is certain things like that where there's characteristics that you would not expect, such as a saltiness,
Yeah, that's
that
interesting.
would put somebody off in the first sip. So give it a chance, I suppose you'd say.
Give it some time. Yeah.
So yeah, and we'll move on to some other stage, but very quickly while we're on that, we tasted the same wine later that day, and we had it with mussels, and the saltiness of the wine just was sensational.
Worked really well with seafood.
Yeah,
Excellent.
worked
Yeah.
really well with it. So yeah, that's
The intro to what you should do once the bottle's open. Okay.
yeah.
Was it a quick pause just so I can wake up the questions again, and
Mhm.
we'll move on from there. I'm going to move straight on to what are some of the most common or most obvious things to keep an eye out for when you're tasting wine.
Well, obviously one of the main ones, but you don't get it thankfully as much now with the innovations is if the wine's corked or not. Now, obviously, even with the screw caps, it can get oxidized. You know, there can be faulty screw caps. It doesn't matter what you buy. You know, if you buy a toaster, you buy a bottle of wine, there is a certain number of ones that is going to be faulty. But probably more so higher, I would say higher percentage. I think I'd be right in saying that of wines that are actually physically corked will have an issue with oxidization. So yeah, that would be one of the main things. But a lot of times, people would not realize they could drink a bottle of wine and think, there's a funny tang to that, but not quite realize because it's not, it's not really extreme. So I think one of the statistics at one stage was something like 94% of all wine, 6% of all wines that are corked, actually are corked. So 6% of all bottles with a cork in them,
have a taint.
Yeah.
Right. And then
but how extreme that is, I'm not really sure.
I'm
not 100% sure of those statistics anymore, but
yeah.
I know that was something I was taught way back in the day.
Are there things you can do about flaws? I've heard sometimes you can not resolve them entirely, but you can do so, especially more so, I think, with red wine.
With red wine,
yeah, you can almost overcome it.
Yeah, well, like there would be a lot of aged red wines, I suppose you'd say, that I have had over the years that the sediment is just a lot of sediment in it. So obviously you can buy a wine strainer, or just use the strainer you have in the house, really. And I would strain it through a few times. It's happened to me many times. But I would let it sit and breathe for a while, because of the fact that it's been stuck in the bottle with if you ever try the sediment, it would make your tongue feel like a cat tongue. Effectively, that roughness. So whenever you extract that from the juices and give it a minute or two more than a minute or two to chill out and breathe and gasp for oxygen because it's been in the bottle for that long.
Yeah, if that made true.
Yeah, it usually does. It mellows the wine out.
And is that's the kind of thing where you want to try and introduce a decanter or something like that?
Yeah.
Sometimes, not necessarily all the time, but that's when it can come in.
Yeah, totally. And I know there's a lot of people just not as fancy to have nice decanters in the house, and a kitchen jug would do. Yeah. So realistically, you can put it into anything. Well,
I didn't think about that actually.
Yeah. So I've done it before, where I'm maybe not in my own house and I find something like that. I have used a kitchen jug and I've used a strainer out of their kitchen drawer.
Okay.
And even a quick guide to, I suppose, speeding up the process with regards to decanting, if you do need to decant, is to pour it in the kitchen jug and pour it back into the bottle. Do that a few times, and it's given a chance.
Breathing the whole time.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's given a chance for it all to meet the oxygen.
Right.
Effectively. So, quite interesting. So it is.
Yeah.
The difference that can make very quickly.
Okay. Within that, actually, whenever we said, it's more of a red wine thing to do that, to let it breathe.
Definitely. Yeah.
But then we're entering into the differentiation here when it comes to red and white. But then beyond that, obviously there are loads and loads of different grapes.
Yeah.
To appreciate within red and white and rosé and everything else. How easy is it to differentiate between them? Because obviously red and white is very obvious. Most people could pick that out. But then beyond that, what are there ways in which you've learned, or like, is it a trick thing, or do you just kind of get to know the characteristics of each?
You just get to know, really.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, the going on white wine, a lot of wines that maybe has a few years on it, that is corked or has an issue with it, you will be able to tell from the color almost.
Yeah.
You know, the golden color has now went to almost a yellow sort of tone.
Yeah.
It's real dark. That's not to say just because it is deeper in color that it is off, but just depends on the grape and depends on the process and so on, and the age of it. But yeah, wouldn't be very many younger white wines that would have that color unless it was an issue.
Okay.
So.
And when it comes, so if we were just to pick 3 random grape names out of the air and to go for the major characteristics of them.
Okay.
If we're talking about differentiation, are there 3 that you could really obviously sort of say, this is what this one gives you?
Yeah. Well, if you're looking at Pinot Noir, so I'm moving on to red. I'm more of a red wine drinker, as you can maybe tell through these podcasts. If you're looking at Pinot Noir, you're going to get that much lighter characteristic. You're going to see it, you know, it's almost going to be like a Brett Ribena color in the glass for most of them anyway. You can get, it depends which Pinot Noir I suppose you're going with. Like we tasted one earlier with our visitor from New Zealand, and real sort of like cherry dark fruits, but
super dark.
You don't always get that with Pinot Noir. That's
okay.
Not typical. You maybe get some of the sort of the strawberry red fruits, you know, something much lighter with Pinot Noir. So I suppose it does depend too on how it's grown, where it's grown, what sort of climate it's grown in.
Maybe sometimes to do with getting to know the producer as well. Rather than just the type of grape or the part of the world.
100%. And then you moving on to something like you've got something like, say, a Shiraz. I love a good Australian Shiraz, and it's going to be much bolder. You're going to get that sort of spicy sort of red fruit notes coming through on it, which is really interesting. Thing I like about a Shiraz. And then maybe moving on to something like well, even Cabernet as well. You tend to find a lot of bigger Cabernets would have, I suppose, that sort of earthy sort of farmyard, if you've ever heard the terminology farmyard, smells or tastes coming through on it. So that can be quite interesting as well. But there's no real rule of thumb, I think, with regards to, you know, because it's a Shiraz that it has to have, or because it's a Cabernet it has to have.
Okay.
You know, again, reverting back to that Pinot Noir earlier, like that was much darker cherry, you know, that sort of chocolate sort of notes coming through. Again, it's down to the type of climate that it's grown in and how it's made.
Okay. So we're kind of the as we move through the questions, they're sort of getting a little bit more, probably not challenging, but I find going to get not more or even more personal. But the next one we've got is, can anyone learn to appreciate wine? Because I have my own kind of, not background, but I have my own ideas of where we are on this one. But
yeah, I would say anyone can. Yeah, I would say a lot of it's down to, like, I use the coffee idea the same as wine. You know, there's a lot of people who up to a certain age do not like coffee, and then all it takes is for them to taste that one coffee that they like, and then all of a sudden they acquire a taste. You tend to find that with wine as well. We've had many people through our tasting room, and there has been couples or friends or anyone really that has came along, and say one person drinks wine all the time, the other person is there to taste, see if they can acquire a taste for it, but also at the same time, really just for a night out, you know, a social night. And we would get people who would come up to us at the end of a tasting, or maybe during the tasting if we have a chance to chat, and would say to us, you know, I really like that Moscato, or I really like that Cabernet. And, you know, it opens up. I would then ask them there and then, what did they like about it? You know, what characteristics were they getting? And there's been times where we've found one wine that they've kind of liked, but maybe not loved. And then I've been able to recommend them maybe a few that they can bring home and taste themselves. And all of a sudden, yep, that's it. We've found the one effectively. So I think anybody could, to be honest.
Anybody could. Because it's just whenever I was going through these questions to format this, whenever we were students, I've always had coffee my whole life. I think since I was like 8. It's probably not a good thing, but my wife didn't start drinking coffee until we were students. She just used to describe it as dirty water up until about the age of 20, 21. But then more recently, then when I've gotten to appreciate wine more and starting to understand more about it, no matter what I try and no matter how much you try and really take a patient approach to what do you find, she still just she'll try something and just go red wine, and it just there's a real, whenever you are, like you say, as you get to a certain age and you begin to appreciate things, trying to bring other people with you can be quite hard, but I think some people just need that bit more time and experience. It's difficult, but I reckon I'll bring her around at some point, but it can be quite difficult, I think, to develop that. Maybe not, palate's maybe not the right word, but it's just, I thought that was an interesting question to ask.
Well, I would say, I have heard so many stories over the years, and I've heard, obviously COVID was a big thing because a lot of people's taste and smell changed after that. Pardon me. And so that would be one that has put people onto or off certain things. Okay. Pregnancy is a big one.
That's true. Yeah.
There's so many people. In fact, a customer of ours, he would drink red, she would drink white, and throughout the pregnancy she would have had a wee sip just to see what's that like, just what's that like. And now that the baby is born and everything's back to normal, she is now stealing his red wine. So so instead of them coming in for a case of red and a case of white, it's maybe 18 bottles of red and 6 bottles of white.
Maybe it makes things easier for them.
Maybe sometimes, so that's you hear things like that. You also hear age is a big thing, because you know yourself, like whenever you were 18 years of age, did you appreciate Brussels sprouts and broccoli, this, that, and everything else? Do you eat it now? Yeah. Mushrooms, like I never ate mushrooms until about maybe 5 years ago, and now I love them.
That gives me a bit of hope. I still can't.
So everybody's taste just does change, and it definitely is an age thing, in my opinion. So I think it's just tasting the right thing.
Okay. So, and then for anyone who's struggling to find that, or to not find that right thing, but to get in, put the foot in the door of that process. Yeah. Are there, that you know of, any resources or places or events, courses, anything like that are available for people who might have that desire?
I think for a lot of it would be, first of all, it's in the mind as well. So they need to, if they really want to, they will learn to, I suppose you would say, learn to like it as such. But going to different events, like tasting events, like some of the tasting rooms that we've been in before, where you can try sample measures, and don't be afraid. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. It doesn't matter what you're doing, and I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of people, is they don't like to push themselves out of their comfort zone in case they don't like it. If you're sitting at a table and it's Christmas time and there's 10 family members around the table and somebody's drinking something, don't be afraid to say, let's have a sip of that. And I think things like that are the stepping stones into liking or learning to like wine. I would say as well, like obviously wine appreciation courses, I think nearly every city in the world probably run them somewhere. There's always somebody in them. Wine tasting events, you go on holiday, we all know we feel a little bit different on holiday. Everything tastes nicer whenever you're in.
And you're that bit more relaxed and trying to put yourself out there a little bit. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So if you're doing that and you're going to buy a cellar door and you're in Italy or France or whatever, don't be afraid to just say, let's take a wee walk in here. Let's try something. Yeah. And I think from my experience of doing that, anyone who who's doing something like that, you know, and you're walking in through a cellar door, you're probably walking in to meet the winemaker, you know, without realizing it.
Yeah.
Or somebody who has obviously been involved in the industry for a long time, and they'll strike up a conversation, the same as what I would with any customer walking in through the door here. And if I said they did not like wine, or they've tasted this before or that, but we weren't massively keen on it, I would then think to myself, right, okay, based on what they've told me, where would I go? You know, you might have a couple of different options, you might have to try all three, but you know, it's a stepping stone, because for everyone there's no right or wrong answer where to start, you know. So you would tend to find a lot of people who come off rosé wine, starting to go on to white wine, you tend to really like something like a Moscato, or Pinot Grigio is a big one. But you know, for me, I'm not a massive Pinot Grigio fan. I just think to myself that it does the job that you want it to do. You know, you want to sit down and just have something cold in your hand and just sip away at it. But there's not a lot in most Pinot Grigios. Maybe not the one we tasted earlier. That was sensational.
Yeah, it was very good.
But in a lot of just basic Pinot Grigios, some of them can be quite bland, so they can. Yeah. So and again, anyone who comes to me and says to me, I do not like wine, or it gives me a massive headache the next day, or whatever it may be, the first thing in my head is challenge accepted. I'm going to
find something.
I'm going to find something for you.
It's got, and I suppose that gives you a bit of satisfaction as well, that you can keep that confirmation in your head that you can get anyone into this. Which I've always liked as well. The challenge of appreciating something that has a culture around it can be really engaging to some people, but then other people kind of back off because it's not just, you can't just walk in a way. But then if we're talking about getting in the door, obviously there's that elephant in the room of pricing when it comes to wine. And obviously, as someone who sells wine for a living, it can be an interesting perspective for other people who maybe don't know so much. But when it comes to getting that foot in the door, what is there a price range that you would kind of tell people to stick around, or is going more expensive better, or is it just is there like a something you can boil down within that realm of pricing that would suit?
I would say if you walk into a shop, and supermarket, wine shop, whatever, and they have a wine at £5, and they have a wine at £8, and another one at 12. Well, it depends what the wines are, first of all, but say it's the same grape, effectively. You know, so you've got a Sauvignon Blanc, and your Sauvignon Blanc is £5, and you've got another one at 8 and another one at 12. You know, I would like to think the buyer for that shop has done their job properly, that the £8 one is nicer than the £5 one.
Yeah.
And the £12 is better than the £8. So if the buyer has done their job properly, you know, obviously the £12 one is going to be the nicest. But is that going to be the nicest for somebody who's starting off, or is that maybe just going to be a little bit much? So I would tend to go in the middle of the road. That's sort of like £8 to £11. You know, I find quite a few, and I'm sure sitting here, you're probably sitting thinking of a lot of ones we have in that price range that sell
and ones
very well.
I've tried within that range as well, which I can back that point of they would stand out in their own way, almost because of that perfect combo of different elements.
But you know, the minute and that's not to say, like, you know, if you go into a shop and you buy one at £8 and you say, I really like that, okay, what was that, a Sauvignon Blanc, or that was a Chardonnay, or whatever, right, okay, there's one that's £3 more expensive, let's try it. You know, it's not going to say that you're actually going to really like it. You know, it can be a completely different style. It does depend. I would say, I think that's why, like, any opportunity you get, you know, in store, we do weekend tastings where there's always something open that you'd mentioned was opened earlier, and the customer got to come in and taste it free. You know, like I remember walking around the supermarkets whenever I was a kid, and you know, they had wee cubes of, well, probably still do actually, wee cubes of cheese, or cocktail sticks, and the wee bits of ham, or whatever it may be. And you know, that's basically what we're doing in store. You know, it's letting people taste something that they're not going to usually lift in their trolley. And so things like that. But also, if you have a good independent off license locally, or a good wine bar, take their advice. Just take their advice, and you know what? If they get it wrong, don't crucify them.
Well,
Try the next one, because what's right for you is not always right for someone else.
And it's at the end of the day, it's a recommendation.
Yeah.
Same as with a movie or a TV show. It's it might sound right, but it might not be right.
Yeah,
good point.
Yeah.
Then, so you've talked about events that go on in here as well, and we'll kind of wrap things up in a minute. But if people local to us or willing to travel this direction wanted to get in on the events that we run from a beginner's perspective, or from the perspective of someone who does know a little bit more, is there any way they can kind of keep up with what's going on and how you can take part in those events?
Yeah, so, well, obviously, like everyone else, social media is the big thing. Everyone is all over different platforms. So are we. And it's one of those things that people like to scroll, and just, I know people who just want just a wee minute out of their own lives just to sit and scroll, and they'll take it in. So if they see something that tickles their fancy, they'll stop and they'll read it. But one of the main things is how to learn, or how to get on board with it fully, is we would have a mailing list which will email you with the next event that's happening, and then a reminder that the event is happening. Effectively. We also work with Eventbrite, who do that for us as well. So they're quite good, and where we're located here in Antrim, we're lucky enough to have public transport right behind us. Just a 4 or 5 minute walk to Antrim train station. I know Northern Ireland is not massive for trains, but it's the type of thing that we could, whenever we're hosting an event, I suppose you expect most of the people in the room to be local, but
you would hope that they weren't driving either.
Well, that's true. But we would get quite a lot of people from Coleraine, Ballymoney, Ballymena, that would pop up every so often, because they're able to jump on the train and come down. We have, going the opposite direction, obviously it takes you into Belfast and beyond. And really, if you're leaving Cityside in Belfast, it's less than 20 minutes on the train. So by that way of means, 20 minutes won't even take you to some parts of Belfast.
That's true.
Lisburn Road and out to Ormer Road, or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think sometimes people think in Northern Ireland that Antrim is ages away.
Not necessarily. When I first started working and moved to Antrim, it was surprising just how convenient it is for everything. It is very, very central to a lot of stuff, which is really nice. It's brilliant. And even that artery that Antrim's on, from North Coast, anyone, like, we would have a lot of customers who would, this is taken away from the tastings, but we would have a lot of customers who would come from sort of like Portadown right through to maybe like Downpatrick or whatever, and they're taking that artery up to the North Coast the weekend to holiday homes or whatever. The way through. Okay. So and with Antrim being a bit of a destination, with the airport beside us, like, people always need to kill time. They want to make sure that they're in the local area. So it's very well positioned, I think. What I'll do for anyone who is listening and is interested in those events, we'll put something somewhere about how you can join the mailing list, so that anytime we do run stuff, you'll be able to find out. But to finish us off, is there, or are there, say we'll cap it at 5 wines that are on your mind right now that you would say, go try this, to either a beginner or someone who does know, namely ones that they could get from us, that then we can just go, you can go straight to our website, find these wines, order them, and then you've got your first sort of recommendation from the idea of what we're trying to do here.
Well, without breaking the bank too much, there are a few. I, going on my personal taste, I'm quite fond of a South African Sauvignon. We have a few in store at the moment, online. Two of which, to name, is the Rustenburg Sauvignon Blanc and the Bellevue, Chateau Bellevue. Both fantastic. They don't break the bank. They're in that sort of like early teens, mid-teens, which is quite good. So, if you replace them alongside I'm going to say New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, you're going to see night and day of a difference, in my opinion.
Right.
A lot less floral, a lot less acidic. It's just it ticks every box for me, as you can probably tell. Moving on to reds, I have to say I do love a good Primitivo or Zinfandel, which is the same grape, just called different things in different parts of the world. And a few of the Primitivos that we have, so one called Electric Bee, from Italy. Again, maybe that sort of like £12-13 price mark, roughly. You think I should know all of these? So that would be if I was feeling like that sort of Primitivo sort of, you know, you get the sort of like nice velvety sort of like flavors coming through on it. And then hands down my favorite red wine would be Woodstock Shiraz. Just does something really good for me. It is slightly more expensive in the higher teens, but it was, you'll hear about it at some stage in the future, but it was the wine that put me onto wine.
That's what I've been told, and it's ever since I've heard that, it's every time I walk past it, it's trying to think about what that must be like, and how, you know, it's almost like I'm holding off the point when I do try it, because to me it's gotta be pretty good.
Do you know, for me, very, very briefly, for me, the day I got to taste it, the winemaker was here in store. He had travelled over from Australia, and I would say I was probably 20, 21 at this stage. Right. Not really interested in wine, believe it or not. I'd have been more my sort of vodka and mixers and so on like that there, because that's what every 20-year-old is like.
Exactly, yeah.
And really, I didn't even know, as much as I wanted to pursue the business aspect, but I didn't really know very much about wine at that stage. And well, what a 20-year-old does. And that was the light bulb moment. You know, I got to taste the portfolio, and there was just something about that moment, and I can feel the moment right now sitting here. I can feel the moment that I felt there. And it was the moment I probably knew that, do you know what, wine's for me. So backing up what I said earlier, you know, I had tried many, many wines, and I just said about finding that right wine, and then that's you know, you then like wine. And for me, it took me, I would say, probably working maybe 2 or 3 years full time here, tasting wine along the way and not really liking it, but that one day,
that was it.
So persistence is key.
Dude, keep on trying to not stop, essentially. But same with most things, really, when you think about it. But yes, I'm not going to keep you any longer today. Is there anything you kind of want to close with from that wine 101 point of view, or do you feel like we've enclosed it all very well?
I would say everything's kind of been covered well. I would definitely just back it up by saying, you know, trust your local wine shops, trust your local, you know, barmen, you know, and you will know by talking to them, are they just trying to get a sale or not here? Do they know a little bit about it? But, you know, keep trying. And, you know, even if it's the type of thing, like, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, really, and you're listening, you know, ping us a message, you know, click the link on the website, ping us a message and just say, listen to the podcast, you know, this is what I've tried. I've kind of liked this. Would you advise what grapes or what countries to try? And
what I would love to do is integrate Vivino or something like that into the process, where people can see what we've tried and recommended, and then we can use it to directly inform them about it, if necessarily we don't have what it is they're talking about. So that would actually the idea of contacting us to then have information passed back could be quite good.
This is the thing, I'm probably quite different to most businessmen. I actually don't mind helping people out, even if it's not going to be money in the till for me. And that's the thing. I think that's where and don't get me started on this, but I think that's where a lot of people have failed in life as such, where they just, you know, won't do something for somebody unless it was something for them.
I know what you mean.
So I definitely think that's one thing that I would do. You know, trust that person that seems to know what they're talking about, and you know, try it. And you know what, they might get it wrong, but it's the type of thing. We could open 10 bottles of wine, and you could like 5, I could like the other 5. It doesn't mean either of us are wrong. You know, for not liking the same wines.
True.
So that's
excellent.
What I would say.
Thank you very much again for today, and we'll see you again very, very soon in the future. I'm not sure what for just yet, but I'm sure it'll be just as interesting.
Yeah, hopefully. Awesome.
Thank you very much for joining us today on this, the first official episode of the Vintage Podcast. If you want to catch up with us on any sort of social media platforms, just search for the Vintage Wine Merchants on most major sites. If you want to sign up for any of the updates on events and things like that, you can find information in the description. If there's anything else you want to get in touch with us about, just look us up, or you can email info@vintagewinemerchants.co.uk. See you next time.